the prosecution due to present its closing arguments in Donald Trump's civil fraud trial after a dramatic scene in which the former president himself addressed the court. The judge had only allowed Trump to speak on the condition that he focus on the facts, but the president quickly veered into other territory, claiming he is an innocent man being persecuted, and the judge telling defense counsel, please control your client. To be clear, the former president has already been found liable of inflating the value of his properties to get favorable loan deals, and it's just the penalty that's left for the judge to decide, with Attorney General Letitia James seeking a $370 million judgment. NBC News has learned the judge will attempt to issue his ruling by the end of this month. MSNBC national correspondent Yasmin Vasugian is reporting for us outside the courtroom in New York. Vaughn Hilliard is in Urbandale, Iowa. Also with us, Renato Mariotti, former federal prosecutor. Okay, Yasmin, let's talk about what we're expecting to hear from the prosecution when they start their closing arguments. Somebody might argue that, at least in terms of drama, Donald Trump's a tough act to follow.
Yeah, I think that person would likely win that argument. Nonetheless, I think Letitia James has got a lot in store. She's going to have 2 hours of prosecution. She is not actually likely to offer those closing arguments to other attorneys. In the Attorney General's office, we'll be offering those closing arguments. Let me walk you through, Chris, if I can, some of the written statements that were provided by the Attorney General's office ahead of these closing arguments today to give us kind of some indication as to the direction that they're going to be heading in, saying, quote unquote, virtually every action they took in preparing these statements of financial condition, I should say, was part of a fraudulent scheme. They claim that Eric and Don Jr. are unable to carry on with this organization and should have a court-appointed monitor. They go on to talk about the old post office building in Washington, D.C., saying they used fraudulent documents to win the bid to renovate and operate a hotel there, profiting, by the way. And this is part of the reason why they increased the fines that they're asking for from $250 million to $370 million, profiting $140 million. They concluded in this statement, Chris, by saying this: the conclusion that defendants intended to defraud when preparing and certifying Trump's statements of financial condition is inescapable. The myriad deceptive schemes they employed to inflate asset values and conceal facts were so outrageous they belie innocent explanation. That is just a portion, Chris, of what we are likely to hear over the next 2 hours when it comes to the prosecution's closing arguments. The former president has, in fact, left the building after, as you just talked about, offering his own version of those closing arguments, in which he was then subsequently cut off by Judge Engoron. And then we're going to have to wait and see when that decision is going to come down the pipe. Judge Engoron has been incredibly meticulous, incredibly cautious. He has taken time to come up with his decisions throughout this entire trial period. So we're expecting a decision when it comes to those fines and what happens to the Trump organization and whether or not the former president can operate in New York City at all for the rest of his life by the end of the month.
Okay, so Vaughn, it was not expected that the judge would allow Donald Trump to speak at all. What do we know about what happened?
Right. Just 24 hours ago, the judge said that Donald Trump would not be able to speak inside the courtroom today because he and his legal team did not agree to the preconditions that Donald Trump would stick to only talking about the evidence that has been presented over the last 3 months at trial. But come here this morning, Donald Trump still showed up in Lower Manhattan, and before going in the courtroom, declared to the cameras that he was frustrated by that decision by the judge. And take a listen to part of his remarks before going into that courtroom.
They don't have one piece of paper. What we've run is a great company, and that's been proven. Very highly successful company. This was a political witch hunt for election interference, but also for getting somebody elected because you wanted to get the publicity. It's a disgrace, and they should pay me damages.
Fast forward, Chris, Donald Trump then went inside of the courtroom and then was actually granted 5 minutes by the judge to speak. But he went outside of the parameters that the judge had instructed him to stick to, and instead took a direct shot at Letitia James, the New York Attorney General, sitting just a few rows behind him there, noting that she hates him, and then also took a shot at the judge, making the case there inside of the courtroom during that statement of his that he had an agenda against Donald Trump. So, this is for Donald Trump. Obviously, much is on the line that Asman just outlined here, but he is going to try to make the case for the future of his company, and we expect a press conference in which Donald Trump will be speaking to cameras again in just about a half hour from now.